You're listening to Spiked Lemonade, the only RoundNet podcast that squeezes out all the juice in the RoundNet community right now.
Spiked lemonade, on the way to the top, about to elevate. Spiked lemonade, and the boys don't play, better get it straight. Spiked lemonade, on the way to the top, watch me elevate. Spiked lemonade, don't hate, just wait. Spiked lemonade.
Today we have a very special guest, sitting in at 175 pounds, 5'9", coming in with a presence in this community. Everybody knows him. You love him, you hate him. We have Tripp Pierson alongside me, Matt Spo, and the one and only
Josh DiDonato.
This is going to be an exciting podcast. Yeah, thanks for coming.
Appreciate
Welcome.
y'all having me.
Oh, we're excited. This is going to be a good one.
Yeah, excited to have you. We just had Katie on. That will be last Friday, so coming to you now. Friday before the championship series, which will take place tomorrow. For us, we're recording a little bit back in time here, but will be tomorrow for the listeners. We'll get into the championship series a little bit, get into your background a little bit, some nitty gritty, some X's and O's, a little bit more about you. Right now, I think most people that are in the Spikeball RoundNet Discord know Tripp to be somewhat of a controversial figure because of his somewhat hot takes and the way he is sort of brash and, just here's what I think, and he doesn't mince words. And here we're going to give you a little bit more peel back the curtain as to who Tripp actually is, his history, not just in the RoundNet community, but him as a person, so that when you hear his opinions or read his opinions, see him at a tournament, maybe we peel back a little bit of this just judging the book by the cover and not actually taking the time to get to know Tripp as a man, as a guy, one of the bros now. I've only get to hang with you now for not even 24 hours, and I really enjoy time with you. I think you're a good dude. I like you and Katie together make a hell of a team. I think anybody sticking by their daughter, son, child to push them to be as best as they can to reach the top level or the top of anything, whether it's school, work, sport, I can never crap on that in any aspect. And I know that you want to see the sport grow, but I think that in what I know about you so far is that motivation comes from how Katie's love for the sport and her love now to play and you wanting the best for her and seeing a platform where she can play and it be a fair playing field and see the sport grow as much as it can because Katie loves it. You think that's fair to say?
I do.
Yeah. So I'm gonna turn the mic over to Tripp a little bit here and allow him to give us a bit of an intro, who he is, where he comes from, and the very, very early stages of your relationship with RoundNet and all sort of like the hats that you've worn up until now as like a brief overview before we start digging in.
Fair enough. I appreciate the opportunity to be here. I do have a lot to say. I feel like I don't have an opportunity to be heard in many instances, and so I appreciate the opportunity to have my voice be heard. I know a lot of the things that I say might be viewed as controversial. Before we get into any of those things, and I'm not going to pull back off of anything that I've said, I'm going to back it up. Because I believe in the things that I say. I believe that they're true. And I don't really ask anybody just to take my word on it. If I tell you something, then I feel like I can prove it to you. But I think that's only fair. I will say that I do try to be balanced. And so before we get into anything that might be viewed as controversial, I want to be very clear that Katie and I started playing RoundNet in 2017, and the sport has come an incredibly long way since then. And it's due to the time, and effort, and resources of a lot of people. Our venues have gotten so much better. Our tournaments have gotten so much better. Our coverage, has gotten so much better. It's a huge, huge difference. It's a night and day difference to the places we used to play, how we used to play, the way that RoundNet used to be done, and the way it is done now. And I try when I go to tournaments to tell people that are on the ground, that are putting in that effort, whether it's Andrew Gassaway, how much my family enjoys being able to watch Katie play in the semifinals or the finals with commentary and a scoreboard. And it's really cool for our family, and it means a lot to us. And we appreciate all of the efforts that everybody that puts in that effort, we appreciate that. It's not just because I don't agree with everything that's going on doesn't mean that I don't appreciate all the good that's been done and all the good that continues to be done. So I just want to make that really clear, first and foremost.
So balls and strikes. I know you've brought that up a couple times to me as we've prefaced and prepped for this episode. He's stuck true to it. And what you won't get today is you won't get the Spike Lemonade crew listening to Tripp and not being willing to challenge and or give him play devil's advocate. We're not just going to be sitting here being yes men and like yeah, agreed. If there's something he says where we want him to back it up. He says he has the proof behind the pudding. Let's see it. So he talks about balls and strikes. He is very complimentary of people in areas in the round net community that are doing things that he believes are good for the game. And he's been true to that, and I've enjoyed our prepping for this podcast, getting to know you a little bit. And I think that as we peel back the curtain, we're going to get to know a little bit more of the nitty gritty of why you really feel passionate about the things that you do. So take me to day one. We do this with everybody. We'll keep it short and sweet, but take me to the day one. Where did you see the round net set first? Was it the aforementioned set that Katie received from her uncle? Was that the first one you saw as well?
Well, that was a Slammo set.
Oh, was it really?
I was gonna ask
she
that.
gave us the wrong
I was
deets.
gonna ask that. I was gonna. I wish I did. I was thinking about it. I was like, was it a spike ball set? Was it off brand? Was it the standard? Was it a pro? So it was a Slammo.
He sent us a
black and
Slammo
green
set. Yep, black and green, and we played at I think 3 different size balls, and we kind of goofed around with that on the beach a little bit. And then I think I was watching a football game, and I think somebody we were gonna play Slammo later that afternoon, and I think the Gators were on, and somebody ran the opening kickoff back on the Gators, and I kicked the set and I broke it.
Oh my gosh!
It was laying there in my living room, and I just kicked the thing, and I was like, I broke the set right off the bat, and then I was like, well, I got to replace this, but I didn't know where to buy one or anything, and so I started looking on. That's the first time I saw a spike ball, and I was like, it's the same game, and then we had to go get a spike ball set from the store, and that's when I found out, there's actually a pro set. Well, I was like, that sounds like what we want. We want the latest and greatest, and everything. So that's how I found out about spike ball. And then once I was online, then I was like, they actually have tournaments. This is actually like a thing. This is actually like a sport, not just a toy. And we found some guys at UNC Charlotte. I called Harding Brumby, who's an OG player, and talked to him on the phone. I was like, we like playing this game, and and he's like, well, these guys play tournaments, so we kind of hooked up with them, and that's when we kind of found out that there was actual strategy and real sport, and that's how we kind of got into it as a real sport. It kind of happened at the time that Katie was getting out of competitive soccer and kind of looking for, I don't know that we were looking, but it just happened at the right time, and we stopped playing competitive soccer, but she was used to a competitive sports atmosphere. And she liked playing this, and we liked playing it together. And I'm completely over the hill. I'm in my 40s at the time, but I was like, hey, this is new and fun, something we could maybe actually play together rather than just me coaching. And that's kind of how I got started.
Yeah, I would say something that's real interesting that I heard is, so you saw a first spike ball set, and it was pretty soon you got introduced to the competitive scene. What was the timeline between, how long was it after you first got the set to when you started playing with those UNC guys?
Well, I think it was the summer beforehand we goofed around on the beach, and then we got it out next spring, and we're kind of, me and a friend of mine were playing more so than Katie. I can remember Katie a couple times just coming and just hanging out and watching. She wasn't even playing. She was with me, and she would hang out and do whatever, and we were actually playing. So it wasn't like Katie was involved to begin with. But then I wanted to play a tournament, and they had a women's division. I was like, well, maybe Katie could play in the women's division. And then I think it was really the tournament atmosphere that really got the hooks in us. And she liked playing with the girls. And that's always what she wanted to do, was compete with other girls. it was a long time before we were able to do that because there really wasn't much of a women's division at the time. So we ended up playing together in open division for a long time just so we could be like a real team, because I think that was what was missing. Is she could, play here and there with other people, but we could do it together and have strategy and uniforms and be on the same page and take it as seriously as we wanted to. Even in the intermediate division, we wanted to win the intermediate division, and playing against full-grown adults for a long time when she's 12 and 13 years old and I'm 40 years old, playing against college kids, it's hard. So it really pushed us to kind of, for her to get better, for me to get better, for us to get better as a team. And that's what we really enjoyed, was the challenge of making it like a real sport.
What was the team name of Katie and Tripp?
That's America.
America.
Team America.
MER?
MER, apostrophe MERICA.
What is the what were the jerseys of that?
Oh, I'd have to show you. They're beautiful. They're some of my favorite jerseys. It's a red and white stripe. Katie designed them.
It's up your alley.
It's got the Constitution in the background of the front and the Declaration of Independence in the background of the back.
Wow.
John Hancock, the signatures on the bottom and everything. It's one of my favorite jerseys and one of the first ones.
You got to send a picture of that. I'll throw it up
We'll
on the
throw it
screen
on the
for you
screen.
guys, but
Yeah.
that would be awesome.
I have
Definitely.
one interjection before we blow by it, because it was something I was curious of when she said she had an athletic background in soccer. I'm engaged. He's going to be getting engaged here. Kids come at some point in time, and I think about, I really can't wait till my kids get involved in sports.
Yeah.
But I wonder, what kind of parent, because I have a little bit of a temper. I wonder what kind of parent I'm going to be on the sideline when my kid's playing competitive sports, whether it be just like rec league, high school, and onward. Give me the truth. How were you? Were you a nut job on the sideline during her sporting events? Did you ever get kicked out of a game?
No, but for a long time I was coaching. Little kids need coaches. And even though I wasn't like a big soccer guy, I have some soccer experience. And so when she was 4 and 5 years old and we got started, you really just need somebody out there who's got a little bit of organizational skills, to get them together, herd the cats kind of. And so that's what I did for maybe 4 years or so. And we took it serious, but it got to a point where they needed like a real coach, somebody from South America, these guys that really know the sport. And then he took over for a couple years. Then they switched from the smaller field. I don't know if you're familiar with youth soccer, but they go from like a smaller field and playing 8v8 with smaller goals and everything to like a FIFA-sized field. They go all the way. They don't step it up. They just go to like huge.
Yep,
Katie
for
was
11s.
a goalie. So she's playing on the top team at her little club. And then they go to the huge field. And now it's very hard for her with her size to continue to be a goalie. And she really didn't have field skills because she's been in the goal and training with her goalie trainer for 2 times a week and everything. So then for her to switch over, so she really didn't have a place in competitive soccer anymore. She's just kind of behind. And that's why I say spike ball kind of came along at the right time for us. She was used to practicing something 3 times a week and going and playing tournament weekends. That was something that she was used to and really liked. She always loved to compete. Doing athletic things, pushing herself. But we didn't have a sport to do that anymore. And here came spike ball. So, and I think that it was interesting because I thought, hey, I saw immediately that this not only is something that she really loves to do, but if it grows, like it could grow, like we see that it could grow, if she's in on it early, she could be one of the best players in the world one day. And that was exciting to her, and to me. Rather than being a great soccer player amongst a million soccer players or tennis players or golfers or whatever, she could be at the start, of a new sport.
Let me go with this one, please, if I could. As we talk about your vision of where the sport could go and where she could find herself among the best players, can you pinpoint a moment, a tournament, a conversation, a year where you saw in her she actually has it? She actually has what it takes if she commits to be one of the best players, period.
Yeah, I would say it was really during COVID. COVID hit, and we spent a lot of time together. COVID really didn't slow me down or us down. It's just not the way I'm wired. But we had a lot of time together just to talk about all kinds of different things, and we spent a lot of time training. I went out and spent some time with Preston, spent a couple of 3 days out there working with him. I brought it all back for Katie, just picked his brain, and we changed a lot of things. We made a lot of changes. In both of our games, I was still kind of playing at that time, but we had to take a big step back because we changed a lot of what we were doing. And when you make those big changes, you kind of get worse before you get better. We went and spent a couple days with Ashley and PJ Showalter, playing, getting killed by them and mixing up and everything. But when we really got the advanced technique that we were able to get from them, that's when I think she really saw, I can be one of the best in the world at this. And then she just wanted to, we always had specific things to practice, but we had more. We had a lot more to practice and a lot more skills for her to master. And I think she liked the challenge, and it kind of switched from me saying, hey, let's go do this. We need to do this. We need to practice if we want to get better and so forth and so on, to her really taking the lead on that. And she was coming to me and saying, when are we going to practice? When are we going to do this? Or I'm going to work on my serve without me having to prompt her. Once she started to take ownership of that, then things kind of changed. And at that point, honestly, she got so much, on a relative scale, she just got a lot better than I did. My knees were already, kind of hurting, but she didn't have anybody else to play with, so we were still playing together, doing our thing. But her stock is like, I'm just hanging on the men's side, the open side of things. I never had any illusions about being a great player because of my age, but she just went, and I'm like, she needs to start playing. Hopefully, our goal was always for her to play women's. There just wasn't a bunch of women's for her to play. So we wanted to play women's, but then when she would play co-ed, it was like, I got to find her better people so she can compete. Like if I go play against, Katie and I go play against Dylan Fogarty and Olivia Jenke, we'll get murdered. And it ain't because of Katie as much as it is because I'm so lacking.
So you mentioned a lot about the traveling, and over COVID, how you would travel to Preston and the Showalters and kind of just pick at all these legends' brains in the community. And you were actually able to do that because you got a job so that way you can fund your daughters and yours traveling for Spikeball. Is that correct?
Mm-hmm.
So he didn't need this job. He didn't want to go out and he wasn't necessarily interested in doing it, but you found this opportunity and you took it. Talk to us about how that came about, how the idea came about.
So I just, I saw how much travel was involved, and we liked going different places. The first summer we drove around in the car, and we went to Cumberland, Kentucky, and stayed with some people. We stayed with a lot of fun people in the community, like everybody does. We went to the first Kentucky Fried Chicken on that trip, and we played a little local tournament and stuff like that. We went to Travis Core's tournament. So we drove around doing that, and it was a lot. But I just saw that, okay, if we're going to compete on the national stage, this was way before international was even a thought, then we need to be able to travel and do that. And Charlotte is American Airlines' second busiest airport in the world. And I had some friends that worked over there, and we started using guest passes. And then it was like, I just need to get a job over there. And I tried for a while to get a job and wasn't able to for whatever reason, but then I finally did. And then once that happened, then of course that opened doors for us to travel and stuff like that. So, there are different ways. I encourage people all the time, if you have the flexibility, look into getting a job with the airlines, just for the doors that it opens. And I've since got a job, a little job with Hilton Hotels just for room discounts, as well. Like there are ways that you can, travel more affordably and make it possible to do these things. Not everybody has the availability in their schedule, but I do. So that was something we did.
If you had, we talked about it in the last episode, and we said we would ask you here, if you had to guess, and I know it'd be an ultimate guess, what do you think the dollar figure would be in money saved in just airfare between the day you got your job to flying here today to be with us? Do you think it's in the 10,000 range?
No, I mean, we've been doing it for, I would say, easy 6 figures. Easy 6 figures.
It's incredible.
It's just
So
because
we
you're flying
lowballed it.
everywhere. Because you're not driving any more than, 2 hours?
Mm-hmm. No,
So
we fly to Raleigh,
yeah.
which is like 2.5 hours away.
There you go.
Fantastic.
I mean, if you
If
could
it's
do
there,
it, you can do
shoot.
it. Props to you. I was saying that was just one of the smartest things I ever heard. If you have the time to do it, and in order to just like, who would think about like, oh, we're gonna be doing a lot of flying. We want to do this. Let's get a job at the airport. Let's just make it cheaper for us. And that's just super smart. And I commend you for that. That's just really, really smart. Yeah.
So we left off with Katie talking about her building the team of K2 that was built just after, like, a commitment was formed just after the women's final in 2022. She took us through the whole gamut of essentially that you guys getting on a Zoom call with Laura Kunzelman and coming up with a plan for the season, which ultimately ended up being she was going to come actually the tournament before Salt Lake, but then something happened. Then she came for Salt Lake, and then she was going to come back. We're going to dive a ton into all things round net, from the top USAR through to spike ball to STS, to people not stop stealing balls, to rules and regulations, the phantom calls. We have a whole array of beautiful things to dive into. But I think for the sequencing of episodes, I'd love to dive into K2 just to sort of like button up the story that Katie began for us, that she laid for us. And she basically on the pod, and we've talked off air as well, that we felt you guys as a team felt more comfortable with you giving us the scoop. And then she said on the podcast that she feels very, very comfortable because you two went through it completely together. And so it's one story. You guys are completely in sync with what went down and how you were going to give us basically the details. Because that you guys taking down Twins in the fashion that you did in Salt Lake City was so epic. And we've just rehashed it in last week's episode. It was just so epic, man. Matt brought up a point about how he'd never seen, well, A, the women were middle stage, front and center. B, when it got 17s in game 3 of the finals, which would be K2 versus the Twins, both men's semifinals stopped at 17-17. I don't know if you noticed that. They weren't playing.
Yeah.
Nobody
played
was playing
for
except
about 6
for K2 and Twins.
Okay.
Yeah, it was
the
fantastic.
entire arena kind of just stopped and looked, and it was like I get goosebumps feeling about it. I just can't imagine that feeling. And Katie said that it felt really good, and it's just something that I won't forget because that's just a moment where it's like this is the sport, people are into it.
Yeah,
So this is gonna happen.
To set the stage for you, Tripp, it was and she also said that was the one time in round net she like cried some happy tears after that W. So it was cool to see her kind of, break through a little bit because she's pretty like stoic. She kind of just like, she's tough, you know what I mean? She's not real emotional type, you can tell just from what little I've been around her. So let's do this for me. If there's anything backlogged that comes up that you'd like to touch on, I'm completely for it because there's going to obviously be things that happen before, after, and during the Salt Lake City experience. But take me to, you just taken down Twins. They tunnel up. You see Katie run through. Everyone's cheering for them. They hop on the podium, and you guys celebrate. You go, you get in the car, and you're driving back to Taylor Sanford's house. Were you staying there again that evening, or were you traveling home that night?
So we stayed there, and then we went out the next day.
Okay.
So
take me there if you could. Like, that's where I want to start. What was going on in that car ride home? Who were you driving home with? Just take me right there, and then sort of the floor is yours.
So I guess we went home within system, and I think we had a rental car, and so in system went back to Sanford's with us. And we got cleaned up, and we went to Longhorn and just had something to eat. And I think that I fully expected to win, and so it wasn't like a big surprise to me because of all the preparation, that we had done. And so, I mean, I was just thinking about, what's next? What do we need to do? How do we need to get, Laura's heading back? How do we need to get Laura home safe? I was hoping that she would get another first class seat, on the way home so that she could travel back, comfortably. And, it wasn't like a huge deal because I just felt like it was our time and the girls had done everything that they needed to do, to get ready. So, it was a really good trip, and I asked the girls, is there anything that we could have done differently? I was really proud of our execution, on that trip, and I know you said that Katie touched on a lot of, what's leading up to that. But yeah, I thought that everybody did their job. I did my job. The girls did their job. They got themselves ready to play. I was able to support them, preparing food and making sure they got their rest and had a little bit of fun, on the trip as well. It wasn't all business, but they took care of what they needed to take care of. So I felt like when we got to the field that they were ready to play their best. And we started out kind of slow. And Laura did say afterwards when I asked them, is there anything that we could have done differently? We played on a Premier Spike set all week. And then we went and played the tournament on a spike ball set. And she said optically it kind of threw her off. And that made a lot of sense to me. So I was like, yeah, that's a good note, for next time. Let's make sure we get some more reps and more play on the pro set, leading up to the tournament. So we started slow. Laura didn't serve a great percentage. The girls weren't playing their best, but they certainly weren't playing bad. They're good and solid. They went undefeated through pool play and then split with the twins at the end. Angst played us really well. I thought they played an excellent 2 games against us. And then so did Kara and Kayla as well.
K2, I want to touch on that super quick.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think about them coming out to that? Not K2, 2K.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think about them coming out as 2K with the big bullet point to kind of, compliment 2K or K2 to maybe make a little joke about it? What did you think about that?
Yeah, I thought it was a little bit close, to our name.
I think they did that a little bit on purpose.
Yeah, I didn't, it really didn't change, the focus of we got to go take care of business. But yeah, I was just like, I didn't know what to make of it necessarily, but I'm like, so long as we win, it's a non-issue, which we needed to do anyway. So I tried not to get, caught up in that too much. I like Kara and Kayla.
Yeah.
They're nice. They're nice girls and excellent players. And really, I was more, concerned about, their play on the field, like than their name. Kayla and I talked about it a little bit.
Yeah.
We joked about it. It was okay. But, it's interesting. The only time that I had any doubts that we were going to win that tournament is we played in the semifinals against them, and Katie just played horribly. It was one of the worst matches that I can remember her playing in a long time. She did not serve it well. And, it's such a serve-heavy game that we play.
It is.
And generally, when you're serving it well, you're confident and you're playing well behind it. And when your serve kind of gets shaky, then it can affect your setting and your hitting and other types of things. And that's absolutely what happened. So Laura really was steady. And we won that match in 2 games. But like I said, Katie really, really struggled. And so immediately after that match, I'm like, we've got to get her back on track because she knows that she didn't play well. And so I think it helped us because we spent the entire time between the semifinals and the finals while Laura was kind of resting a little bit. Katie and I just went back to work. I mean, we started all the way back at the beginning with her serve and just we got to get it going. And that's, when they played that match, game 1, they made a couple mistakes. And at the highest level, a couple mistakes is all it takes,
death sentence. Yeah.
To lose a game. And that's what happened. But in game 2 and 3, they were really flawless. Katie served. Katie had 1 legitimate double fault, and that was after a hinder call where she put on a really good serve and had to reserve, and then she double faulted. And that's in 2 games. And she was just, she was using all of her serves and firing. She's definitely not as explosive, maybe as Laura is, but that's kind of our plan to win, is that Katie brings pressure. And she, puts serves on and keeps teams under pressure so that Laura can
feel
know
free.
that she's, she can do what she wants to do and hit whatever she wants to hit. And if it doesn't come off, it's okay. Katie's going to bring pressure next time, when it's her turn to serve. And so once we got that going, the setting was excellent. We were hitting our spots and they were on the same page. And so we weren't getting dug at all. We were in system. And even when we had to recover, we had some really good recovery sets and they're putting it away. And, I always felt like the Twins are excellent players. They're really, really good. But one of the things that makes them so good is that they can play free and relaxed because nobody's putting them under pressure. You have to put a team under pressure. And then they'll start making, the little mistakes maybe that other people make. And once we were able to do that, now it's a real match,
Sure.
And they're under pressure, we're under pressure, and now it's more than just one team being such a heavy favorite that they can just blast away and they're not worried about losing. So I felt like once we got into game 2 and game 3, now it was anybody's game, and it's just whoever's going to play the best. And honestly, I would like to say that, hey, we'd have won every match. If K2 had kept playing, we'd have blasted everybody from here to eternity. We'd have never lost again. I really don't think that's the way it would have been. I think that Kara and Kayla would have had an opportunity if they played best on a certain day. They're that good of players. Twins could have beaten anybody on a certain day, and I think that Laura and Katie, if they'd have played best, they could have beaten anybody on a certain day. I think it would have ushered in a new era in women's round net of more parity,
yeah,
of more parity at the very highest level that I think would have been excellent for the sport.
I do want to say, 18-20, Twins are serving the ball, and she double faults. What goes through your head at the end of game 3? You see that?
It had been a long time coming. I mean, it was definitely something that we were chasing. It was, we got to a point a long time ago where winning a few tournaments here and there wasn't good enough. It was just like somebody can be number one, and why not us? We're putting in the work. We understand what it takes to get there. We just need the right partner that's on the same page and has the same commitment level and wants to be number one in the world. Yeah. And I felt like it was a matter of time, before we were able to get there, before we were able to do that, if we did everything that we needed to do. And I knew that we had done the work, and so it was kind of, I was excited. I thought it was just the beginning, but immediately I was thinking, okay, what do we need to do moving forward to win the next one?
Sure. To sustain.
Right, because I knew that the Twins would come back.
Hungry.
They hadn't been pushed, so
could they be lacking some motivation?
Right, when they come back, when they're fired up and they come back with their best shot, what are we gonna do to be ready for that? Right. And so that's kind of where I was thinking, but yeah.
So essentially, to that point in time, in K2's run, there was no like chink in the armor. There was no awkwardness. There was no the writing wasn't on the wall that the team was moving in the wrong direction in terms of like something going on behind the scenes. All was good. Everything
was great. It was an excellent trip. Like I said, it could not have gone better. Okay. Laura came over in a first class seat from Europe, and everything just we had the practice matches set up. We traveled in such a way that we could get our rest and adjust to the time zone changes, mostly Laura because she's coming from all the way over at Europe, but we're still moving 2 hours away. So everything just came off exactly like I wanted it to, and I felt like it had a lot to do with us being able to play our best that day. So the girls spent a lot of time together. I try to give them as much space as I can. Actually, that might be surprising to folks, but
Yeah, I bet it is.
What I try to do is support them and give them everything that they need to be successful, but no more. Nobody likes, somebody in their ear all the time, while they're trying to play. And so I really, for the most part, with all of Katie's partners, so long as they're doing the things that they need to do to play well, to play their best, I just want to shag balls, make sure they're the right inflation, get them under the net so that they can stay in rhythm and play, and just, kind of just cheer them on a little bit. And they were really doing that. I didn't say much that day. If you look at the final, you watch the final back, I'm just off on the side. Like, I'm not even around. I'm just cheering at that point and letting them, they were executing. The first game they didn't, but they knew why.
Sure.
They just made a couple mistakes here or there. And game 2 and 3, they were really executing. They were getting to all their spots. They were running our system. And there wasn't anything that needed to be said. It's just, hey, let's go. And so, it was an excellent tournament, an excellent trip all the way around. And Laura got a first class seat, to go home. And I was really excited about that. And then, 3 days later, we got an email, and she said that she didn't want to play anymore. So, and then we kind of dealt with why.
So from an outsider's perspective, just in that same timeline of K2 beating Twins, and then all of a sudden a couple of days later, I see this on Instagram, K2 is broken up. It's shocking. It's shocking in the fact that the number one women's team in the world just got taken down. They were a powerhouse for years, and they lost their first tournament in literally years. Then K2 is high there. What's next for K2? What are they going to do?
Yeah.
Who can take down K2 now? Are they going to be this powerhouse? A couple days later, K2 is breaking up. We're all thinking, why is nobody talking about this? There's so much to talk about, and we have a very talkative community. The community is so tight-knit that it's we have that massive Discord, nobody's talking about it, and it's just what happened. And that's exactly what we have you here for. So basically run it through with us. What happened?
Okay.
How does arguably the best women's team in the world do the unthinkable and then break up?
Yeah, so and at that point, just understand that I was really in a damage control mode, because I'm the head ball shagger of this team, which is kind of the title that I would, give myself. But really, I was putting everything together as far as travel and logistics and, the uniforms and all this kind of stuff. And that's the way that we set it up to begin with, was that the girls, I wanted them to focus on their play, to concentrate on being the best players that they could be and being the best teammates that they could be. And then I really did want for them to be the most professional and most supported round net team of all time. And so I wanted to take all the ancillary stuff off of their plate and kind of handle those things myself and just tell them, hey, be at the airport at this time. We're staying here, but, just don't worry about that. We'll pick you up and then we'll take care of it. So they're not worried about, rental cars and where we're staying and everything. It's just, they know that I'm taking care of what I'm going to take care of. So at that point, it's okay, well, I built this team. I got to figure out what the heck happened, what's going on, but they're, now Laura's 5,000 miles away. We have communication issues. She wouldn't, talk to either of us, except through email. And so now it's just extremely difficult to try and piece together, what's happened and what's going on. So, for a long time, I was really trying to salvage it, trying to figure out what can we do, what the heck has happened, what's going on here. So, when I finally found out, what had happened.
First, what did that first email say?
Yeah, you can cliff note us.
Yeah, so you'd have to go back, and I don't think that I'm telling tales out of school. It's just I just here to tell the truth, about what happened, and really, I guess I would need to back up a little bit to give some context of what's going on.
Please do.
And I guess I would just say, we'll get to everything. I'll lay it all out for you. But I'm fully aware that many people don't think I should even be allowed to be in RoundNet, that I should be able to say, the things that I want to say, or tell the truth about the things that I've seen or the things that I continue to see in the sport. And I asked myself, why is that? Is it because I don't know what I'm talking about? And I don't think that's it, because I've been here a long time. Katie is the longest active women's player in the world. I mean, she's been playing tournament RoundNet longer than anybody at 19 years old. The twins came in after the year after, Katie started playing. And that doesn't really mean anything except to say that we've been around. Like, we know all these people. We know all the top players. We know the administrators. I've been a player. I've been a coach. I've been an administrator. I ran a tournament series one year, mostly just because I wanted to see if the ideas that I had that I'd like to see enacted would actually work. And they did. I was very pleased with those results. Tournament directing was not really my passion, but I did that. I've been an administrator, worked with USAR, making policy, and those types of things. So I know what I'm talking about. Is it the people want to silence me because I'm lying? I'm not lying. I'm telling the truth. And I think that people want to silence me and censor me because I'll tell the truth about things that the top players do, that our leadership does, that Spikeball does, the company, that people don't want other people to know. And, I'll give you an example. So after the night before Columbus, I put out a message, and I said everybody needs to play honestly and fairly, not like what we did in Philadelphia. And we'll talk more about that, okay? And then we can get right down to brass tacks. Olivia posts on the Discord, why is this dude even allowed to be here? Why is this dude even allowed to be here? Okay? That idea is completely foreign to me. I grew up, on the principle, I thought everybody understood the principle, attributed to Voltaire. I may not agree with what you say, but I'll defend to the death your right to say it. I would never tell anybody, no matter what they said, you don't have a right to say that. You don't have a right to be here. That's repulsive to me.
Yeah.
But you have people, that'll come by and give an endorsement, to that. Joel endorsed that. Andrew Gassaway endorsed that. Ezra Danowitz. I mean, those are STS members right there.
Endorsed how? What do you mean endorsed?
They came in, put an exclamation mark, on the Discord on that comment. Okay. Why is this dude allowed to be here? You got 50 people coming in saying, why am I allowed to be here? Why am I allowed to have a voice to say, basically everybody needs to compete fairly and honestly? I didn't say anything controversial, but I'm sure they don't like the fact that I'm alluding to that the co-ed championship in Philadelphia was thrown, and it was. And we'll go through that, and
we'll get more into that for sure.
Yeah. But but you've got people coming in, Rich Tarpey, head of officials, want to endorse that type of thinking. David Gonzalez, who runs a challenger, runs PRA, endorses that type of thinking, that I shouldn't be allowed to be here, that I shouldn't be able to give an opposing viewpoint. Clark Marshall, world champion, Team USA member, Ryan Gross. I mean, so you got a bunch of leadership and a bunch of top players that are saying, if we don't agree with you, you shouldn't be allowed to be here. And that's not right. That's not healthy. So the deal that I'll make with anybody is, whatever you guys want to talk about, we can talk about anything. Nothing's off limits, number one. We can talk about history, economics, politics, science, religion, human nature, round net. I don't care. Nothing's off limits. And I'm going to tell you the truth, and I'll tell it to you unvarnished. I'm not going to spin it to make myself look better or Katie look better. I'm just going to tell you the absolute truth and call balls and strikes. I'll differentiate between what I know and what I can only speculate on, and that's an important differentiation to make.
Yeah.
Okay? And you guys can challenge me back it, and I'll try it, and I'll back it up.
Yep.
Okay? But the problem is that when you say something that people don't like or don't want to hear, then they ask the wrong question. So rather than deal with like the actual substance of what I'm going to say, they'll say, well, and this happens all the time, I don't like the tone. I don't like the way that you said it, or I don't like the tone, or this isn't the appropriate forum, or whatever else. So if I say, for instance, the match was rigged in Philadelphia, somebody's going to say, and this happens, they'll come back and say, well, Tripp's mad because now Gabe and Sarah have more points than Katie and Etienne.
Right.
Well, that may be true, but it doesn't, that's not the question. The question is it true? Is what I'm saying actually true, or is it not true? Like, that's the question. So that, to me, that's your end of the deal. That's your listener's end of the deal. The first question that anybody should ask about anything that gets said or claimed is it actually true? And then we can go from there. Then you can talk about motivations and everything. But if you're not going to deal with the actual substance of the issue itself, then I don't care to talk to you about the way that I said it or where I said it, or anything else. And I think that's fair. I think that's fair.
So now that we've established that, this is where you're coming from. That you're coming from ABC, everything you said, it's all backed up. You go by your word. You don't say it. You say absolutes, and that's it. So let's get back on track with this K2 situation.
So it started in Richmond. Joel and I started having a problem leading up to Richmond. And Joel and I have never had a great relationship, okay? But that's okay. You don't have to be best friends with people that you work with. It's really not a big deal, so long as there's a mutual respect there, and open lines of communication. I feel like leadership owes that to their players. And to me, being that I'm part of the team, whether they like the fact that I'm part of the team or not, I'm part of the team, I'm involved, and so, for instance, like Jonah Zwillinger and I don't see eye to eye on everything, but we communicate well together, and he's straightforward and he's honest with me. And so sometimes Jonah's able to do what I'd like for him to do or ask him to do, and other times he's not, but he always tells me straight up, Like I asked for different observers in Philadelphia in the women's match one time, and he was like, he heard me, and he's like, no, this is who we've got, this is what we're going with. I asked, he answered, I live with it. It's life. You don't get your way all the time. And so we move on. The problem that I have with some people in leadership is they don't deal with me honestly and fairly. I don't think they deal with a lot of people with honesty and integrity and transparency. And then there's no accountability for so much of what people do. So the problem that we had was that we had 17 teams in the women's division in Richmond, and at the time it was set up that was going to bump up the prize money in women's another tier. It was going to be like another, I want to say $950 or something like that, spread out across the 3 teams or 4 teams or whatever it was. Well, Joel and Sachi dropped at like the night before.
Okay.
And Jonah was working real hard to get a 64th team, like to make it even or whatever for the pro division. He was, doing what he does. He was doing a great job is what he was doing, trying to get it,
he went to work.
Trying to get it to be right. and be even so everything would run smooth. Where over on the women's division, not only are we not holding tight to get the extra money for the women, but Joelle, who's the head of women's round net and who is in leadership of the STS and the full-time spike ball employee, drops at the last minute. And so I asked her on a text, what's going to happen with the prize money? And she basically told me, tough luck. We got 16 teams, and so we're going with the 16-team prize money. And I'm like, wait a second. There's an incredible effort going on the men's side to get a 64th team. You drop, and we lose all this prize money. And Katie wasn't a favorite to win that prize money. It's just I was working on behalf of the women's. I was hoping that she was going to maybe get a piece of it, but I didn't really think we were going to make a finals right there. But I was watching.
So
you
weren't satisfied. You weren't satisfied with the effort that took place on the men's versus the women's side.
That's right.
Okay.
And so we exchanged a couple messages before she stopped texting with me that we weren't getting that extra prize money, and I wasn't satisfied with that. So I took it to the Discord, and this is what happens a lot. I try to go through proper channels and deal with people directly behind the scenes, and then the conversation gets stopped, or it's not resolved, and then I have to take it to the Discord. So I threw it out on the Discord, and then kind of went over her head, and then Andrew got the money approved for us, and I think that was a problem. And I just left it alone. I didn't think it was right. I'm like, you should be advocating for the women on their behalf, not just okay, you're not playing anymore, but they still are. They would like the extra prize money. Everybody's got traveling expenses to, go to these tournaments, come from Florida, come from wherever. You should be advocating on their behalf. Why am I fighting with you for the extra prize money for your women? And that was a problem. So I think that's really where it started. The other thing that happened in Richmond, we played, and I went to talk personally to Chris Reuter, who was at that tournament. That's the CEO of Spike Ball. Chris and I have a relationship. Way back in 2017, we went to Nationals in Chicago, and that's when the big monsoon hit, and we had to move indoors and everything. And I met Chris there for the first time. He loved, on Katie and I. We rode with his family.
Pretty cool.
From venue to venue, we got to spend some time with him, and his wife and his kids. And, and I like Chris. He's made some decisions that have been hard for me with my conservative background to support, but I've always tried to support the company anyways. But I had concerns about protecting the integrity of competition in the women's division as far as having biological men participating in the women's division. And I took my concerns directly to him, and we had a good, productive conversation about that. And he told me two things, and I wasn't extremely satisfied with them at the time, but I could live with them. The number one thing he told me is that they weren't looking to push that issue, that Spike Ball and the STS were not looking to drive that issue or to make any changes. And if they got to a point, number two, that they did, that everybody would have a chance to have their voice be heard, that I would have a chance to weigh in and talk about that. And we left it there, and I wasn't going to do anything further because even though I wanted protection, moving forward, I was satisfied with that. And I took him at his word. And we left, and then a week or 10 days later, a tournament, a women's round net tournament, one that Katie had won last year. It was a Queen of the Realm, one of the individual style tournaments. Katie went up and to Virginia, D.C. area and won that event last year. She was extremely proud of it because she went basically to GR's hometown and finished ahead of Allie Rogers and Becca Graham. It was a big deal. Those are legends of the game. And she wanted to go back and kind of defend her title. And we had signed, she had been one of the first players to sign up for that. And when we signed up for that, the participation parameters of that tournament were the same as every other Queen of the Realm tournament.
Okay.
But then somebody went and changed them after I had that conversation with Chris. And to me, that just went against everything that he had told me straight to my face. And so I texted Joelle, and she wouldn't respond to me. I tried to call Joelle as the head of Women's Roundnet. You know, Women's Roundnet runs those tournaments. Spikeball is the official tournament sponsor, you know, the equipment sponsor and the tournament sponsor of those tournaments. Joelle is a full-time Spikeball employee. You know, I wanted to have a conversation with her about why that change was made and who made it, and if she was aware of it, and if they were aware of the conversation that I had just had with Chris in person immediately prior, and they completely ghosted me. They would not respond to any of my and Katie's correspondence to them, not our texts, not our calls, not our emails. I sent them multiple emails, and nothing. And I talked, you know.
What was, before you keep going,
Mm-hmm.
what was the major change in the way that, you know, it was set up, essentially, like in the verbiage? What was the major difference? Because obviously you saw something that was different from the way it was posted to an edit. You know, you get what I'm asking?
Yes. So before it was just a tournament for, you know, for women.
Okay.
You know, it was just very vanilla language that we've always used for our women's division. You know, for women ballers or lady ballers or female ballers or whatever else. And this was explicitly changed. So it had a bunch of language about, non-binary, cisgender, and it finished up with anyone who feels like Women's Roundnet, you know, is the place for them, you know, would be, you know, allowed to or welcome to participate. And, you know, I think I hope that Katie and I have made our position very clear. We have no interest in what anybody's personal beliefs are or what they do, you know, in their personal life or the decisions that they make. That's none of my business. That's none of our business. All I'm interested in is competitive fairness for our women, you know, and that's the problem that I had. That's why I went to talk to Chris privately, directly, and I feel like I was lied to, and I don't appreciate it. I don't appreciate. He did not have to tell me those things and then ignore me and ignore our concerns. Leadership could have handled that honestly. They could have handled it professionally, and they could have had a discussion with us. But they refused to talk with us then, and they continued to refuse to talk with us. So I sent them multiple emails.
So if you would have gotten a response email and it said, "Hey, listen, this is the direction we're going," you know, it almost like, you know, deal with it or get out, you would have appreciated just something more, you know, something.
I think just honest communication is always gonna be beneficial.
Okay, tie this in for me if you could to ultimately this leaking into K2. How does it translate?
So, you know, the correspondence that I sent, you know, to Joelle, to the STS, to Spikeball Incorporated, that's Chris Reuter, all these people. I didn't feel like the STS was really involved per se because that's a separate tournament series, but Women's Roundnet is running it, that's Joelle. Spikeball's sponsoring it, that's Spikeball. Joelle's a full-time Spikeball employee, and she runs, you know, Women's Roundnet. The correspondence that I sent probably a week or 10 days before we won Salt Lake City. Apparently, after we won Salt Lake City, couldn't have been too long, she sent those correspondence that she only had access to because she was in leadership. She sent those to Laura's best friend in Europe, who, of course, then, you know, sent them to Laura. And then Laura was upset about that. And I never got to really have a conversation about my position, how I felt. You know, I never dealt with any of that because it wasn't an issue. Okay? And so Laura got upset with that, and then that was it. And then I couldn't really get her, you know, back. She was so far away. And
she was upset with your position that you took on the Richmond and then ultimately the back and forth with the Queen of the Realm.
She was upset with. I don't know exactly what she was upset about in the end.
Right.
She said that she, could not live with, our belief that, that competitive fairness was that competitive fairness had to be protected in the women's division.
Understood.
So,
and that's essentially was her piece when she sent you the original email, sent your team the original email. That was basically the crux of it, was that fairness and how she didn't feel comfortable with that, and so she was going to step away for a difference of opinion, difference of belief.
She didn't articulate that, it was just our belief at that point. Mm-hmm. She just was upset, with whether it was the tone of my emails or whatever else. She was gonna leave the team at that point. So and here's where, again, I want to call balls and strikes. Like, that might have been a big enough difference that we had that we wouldn't have continued to been able to play together. I don't know. Katie and I, if she didn't believe what we believed, we could have respected her position and continued on. But that might have been too much in any case. It might have come out later. It could have been, the death of us, so to speak, at some point. But the point that I would make is we didn't have a problem until Joelle created a problem. And that's called, in other sports, that's called tampering, and I have to make analogies sometimes because the things that happen in round net are so outrageous that they're so, normalized that we don't know that they're wrong. But, the Dolphins, last year, the NFL fined their owner $1.5 million for contacting Tom Brady and Sean Payton. Tom Brady obviously to come play for him and Sean Payton to be their coach. So he got fined $1.5 million and suspended. They lost their first-round draft pick last year, their third-round draft pick next year. They had a front office vice president of personnel that got fined $500,000, and he got suspended. Every legitimate sport has rules against tampering, about meddling, in other teams. And that's just like player to player. That's just like team to team, okay, is bad enough. Now, Joelle is a player, okay, so she shouldn't be like messing with our team. That's bad enough. But the fact that she's a leader, that she used the information that she had access to as a leader to then tamper with our team is outrageous. She should not be allowed to be in leadership in any aspect for a long, long time. But that's just the type of thing that people would be like in round net, where anything goes, where it's just like the wild, wild west. It's just like, okay, tough luck for you. I mean, it's just wrong. It's just completely unethical and wrong. And I can't see any honest reason whatsoever that she would do that, other than to destroy our team. Like, why? What does she get out of that? What does she get out of releasing that information? If Roger Goodell took information, from an owner's meeting to Patrick Mahomes and said, hey, this is what your owner said in our private confidential meeting, about player salaries, or whatever. I mean, you'd get banned for life. So it's a problem. It's a problem. That's the type of stuff that goes on with the conflict of interests that players have when they're administrators and leaders, and they're doing shady stuff like that, and it's just wrong.
So ultimately, that is the fall of K2. Before we wrap this up entirely for this first part of this series with Tripp, I want to quickly and briefly touch base on something that happened last season as well with a partner of Katie's. In Chicago last year, there was an issue between Katie and Allie, day of tournament. I don't know much about it. I don't want to speculate, but I just want to kind of touch on this because it's not a similar situation, but it's similar in the fact that it's another teammate of Katie's that had left or that just didn't work out midway through the season, 2 seasons in a row now. So I just want to touch briefly on that before we wrap up this episode. What happened with that? Was it just kind of a player thing? It's like maybe we just don't want to play together.
2 things going on. Okay, number one, the STS, and we had talked about this and decided on power pools, and all the different reasons why power pools were beneficial. And the STS had been using power pools in the women's division because of the disparity of talent, and how point differential was deciding brackets, and placing teams into brackets on either the same side or the opposite side, so forth and so on. And it was creating a situation where good teams had to fight for point differential. And the way that they do that is wrecking new players. And it's not a good situation when you're trying to recruit new players into the game and then you match them up against the best players and to get murdered. But if you want to do well, your bracket position matters. So, and this is something that I've been on for years with the STS. And I worked with Jack Scotty, and they'd been using power pools, and it had been going very well. Well, we went to Chicago, and the power pool was set up, and there was clearly 5 teams that belonged in the power pool, and the other teams did not. Well, some people started complaining, and then the morning of the tournament, they switched from power pools back to regular pools. And the way that they snaked it, we were the number 1 overall seed, but we had 3 of the power pool teams in our side. And it was going to make it extremely difficult for point differential, for us. It was just very unbalanced. And they did it the morning of, and they deviated from the way that they had been doing it, and they switched it, and they consulted some other players, but they certainly didn't consult us.
Why do you think they switched it?
I think they were getting blowback. Because some players were saying, we want to play the top teams. We don't come here to play, not to be able to play the top teams, and we don't like the power pool format. And I can understand where they're coming from.
Sure.
I can understand their concerns are valid and everything, but they made a change. They went away from what they had been doing all season long. It definitely hurt us. And they did it with no notice. They asked some other people. They asked the other players in the division what they wanted to do, and they told them, and then they did it, and they didn't ask us.
So you were already there. You had already traveled there. This was on a Friday that they made the switch. So you're there. You're already in Chicago, or maybe the airport.
Yeah. So we were already there. We were in Chicago. And the power pools were set up, and then late that night, I think we had already gone to bed because we go to bed fairly early.
Sure.
Then they switched it, and then I got up the next morning, and now it's like, what the heck is this? And so I emailed Jack Scotty and, Nora, and I was like, this isn't right. Joel was there playing. I'm like, this isn't right.
So that morning, then, Biggie Smalls decides we're not playing.
Well, I decided.
Okay.
I decided. And there were some other... Like I said, there were 2 things going on. That was number 1, and it made me mad that, again, our voice is not being heard. Like, why didn't anybody ask me? Why didn't anybody ask Katie? Why doesn't our opinion matter? Why doesn't, it's just wrong. It was wrong the way that they did it. They decided it unilaterally, like they do everything, and then they just wanted to shove it down our throat and put us into a situation where where it wasn't fair. Okay. And I didn't feel like that was right. The number 2 thing is I don't want to say, I'm not here to run anybody down, but we were at the start of the year, we were extremely, we had multiple meetings, hours long, laying out, this is how things are going to go. This is what we're going to do. This is our plan to win. Our goal is to be number 1 in the world, not number 2, number one in the world, and it's going to take a while, but these are the things that we're going to do to get there.
And this meeting was with you, Katie, and Allie?
Yes.
Okay.
Multiple meetings before the season even started. We just try to lay everything out, and I thought we were all on the same page with that.
Sure.
As we went through the season, we won 4 tournaments in a row. We were getting better. Before we had lost to Kickstart 2 tournaments in a row. Then we beat Kickstart.
Who's that? What's that team?
That's
comprised
Kara. That's Kara
And
Hoy
Sarah.
and Sarah Allen, and
Okay.
they're good players.
That's a good team.
Good team. We won a major out in San Francisco. Like I said, we're the first team ever to win 4 straight tournaments. And yeah, the maybe the top talent isn't there at every single tournament, but
Sure.
still, we went to the tournaments. We showed up. We beat who was there. It was an accomplishment. We were on our way, and then some things happened, and we weren't moving forward. We weren't progressing anymore. We went to Raleigh, and we did not play well. We didn't do the things that we needed to do to prepare ourselves to play well, and we weren't on the same page anymore. And I tried to get us back on the same page. I tried to communicate and be very clear about these are the things that we need to do to prepare ourselves to play well on Saturday, and those things were not happening, and we weren't progressing. We weren't moving in the right direction, and it all kind of came to a head, that morning, and that's kind of what happened. But
Can you take me through that morning a little bit? Because I think as I think about the morning, I go, do you show up or does a message get sent to?
So I was emailing Jack Scotty. We're getting ready to go.
Allie specifically. Was Allie with you guys?
She was.
So you say, hey, listen, I don't feel comfortable with participating in this. Katie says, okay, I got you. Let's do it.
So
and Allie says, let's just play.
We had breakfast. We were warming up. The girls were warming up, and I said, if they don't switch this, we're not going to play, but you don't worry about that. And the girls were warming up and everything. And I told Nora and Joelle, I'm like, we're not playing. You need to fix this. This is wrong.
Right.
I'd emailed Jack Scotty, and I'm like, this is not right. We're not playing.
Right, and you're coming off of 4 in a row at this point in time, right?
Well,
or shortly thereafter.
It was 4 in a row, then 1.
We actually, yeah.
Okay.
No, yeah,
No.
we had lost in Raleigh. After we won 4 in a row, Allie and Allie Jenke played together in Atlanta. They wanted to do that. We had gone to, we were supposed to go to Paris and play over there.
Okay.
And there was a problem with the visa or the passport renewal that didn't get done. And so Katie and I went and played over there. We had to get another partner. We didn't have a great result. It wasn't an amazing trip as far as, what we wanted to do and go and play our first trip in Europe. And so, we came back and we went to Chicago, and we didn't have a great preparation on Friday evening.
Okay.
And we went to the tournament, and we were still gonna play though on Saturday morning.
Were they gonna win?
Were they gonna win? I don't think so.
Okay. Because I know
think so.
we talk about this.
Yeah.
You have a pretty good insight into the game.
Yeah, I
with
don't
the women's
think
side.
I don't think we were prepared.
Who would they have lost to?
I think Sashi and Olivia were playing that day, and then I think Allie and Sarah were playing together that day. I think Joelle and Allie Rogers were playing that day.
It's a good field.
Yeah, so it was a good field, but we weren't doing the things that we needed to do to play our best, and I know the difference. So, that was my gut, that was my feeling, but that's where.
If the field wasn't as strong and it was a tournament that you felt like, I think we're going to clean up here either way, do you think you would have pushed as hard to say, hey, now we're done, we're leaving? You know
No,
what I'm saying?
I think that was a breaking point. That was a breaking point for me with the STS, and the way that they I don't like the way they feel like they can just do whatever they want to do whenever they want to do it, and everybody's just gonna just live with it.
How about Allie when you said, hey, we're not going to play? Was she upset? Was she like, I still want to play? What was her
I don't think
natural reaction to it?
I think I was still kind of dealing with the situation. They were warming up, and then I told them if they don't make this right, we're not going to play.
Okay.
And I think the girls were still focused, like I would want them to be, on warming up and doing what they were going to do. And then I was going over and dealing with that situation. And finally, Nora said, are you going to play? You're not going to play. And I was like, are you going to change it? Are you going to make it right? Are you going to do what you want to, do what it should be? And she was like, no. I said, then we're not going to play. And that was it.
Okay. So the girls at that point in time, or the whole group of you, decided Biggie Smalls at that point in time wasn't going to continue? Or did you leave that venue that day thinking, oh, this one they didn't make right for us, but we're going to go to the next one and try again?
Yeah. So I mean, that really wasn't a decision that we made, like what we were going to do, like for forever, for moving forward on that day.
Makes sense.
It was just Katie was upset. I was upset.
You think a part of her still wanted to play?
I'm certain.
Yeah.
I'm certain.
You think any part of her was just like, Dad, come on, just freaking let me play. Come on.
I mean, we talked about it extensively, and I was just like, no, we're not going to do it.
So what? I'm just trying to think from their perspective. What would justify you making that decision for them? I know your role is like coach, manager. You do a lot for the team. You're a part of the team. But when it comes down to it, the girls are playing.
Mm-hmm.
When it's
a fair counter question.
What justifies you making that decision versus the girls making that decision?
I guess ultimately, I can't make a decision for Allie, and I wouldn't make it. I wouldn't make it for Katie, but I think that Katie trusts me enough to know that nobody wants to win more than I do, short term and long term. Nobody wants to win and be successful more than I do. And so what I asked her to do after I made that decision was to trust me, that I know what I'm doing and this is the right decision. You can't let somebody just walk all over you and do whatever they want to do unilaterally whenever they want to do it and just live with it. It's not right. And it was kind of a stand on principle at that point. And I was like, I know you're upset and I know you want to play, but this is bigger than that.
I think that's a perfect spot to start wrapping up this first part of this series with Tripp. We talked a little bit about Tripp's background, where his role has been in the sport. We talked about K2 and ultimately what came up to the fall of K2 to then lead into some background with some past events that could be similar events in the past that went on. Anything you want to add?
Yeah, I guess my final question, because what happens next is we're going to get into some more of the X's and O's, which is going to be really, really fun. We have a couple spontaneous questions and a couple fun games to play with you as we dig in a little bit deeper. I have this question written down. I told myself, don't leave the pod/conversation without asking you this. Do you think there'll ever be a time in Katie's playing career with Roundnet, depending on how long she wants to play, where you'll say, hey, I'm taking a back seat on this team. It's all you. I'll come to the events that I can. I'll be at as many as I can. But you pass the reins to Katie, and she now rides with it, and you are more or less just there as a support system. Well,
that's the goal.
Okay.
I want to put her. The goal is to put her in a position where the team has all the support that they need to do their very best, and then they can go and do it themselves. I would really like to have more of a life than I've been able to have, through this. coaching is not quite as much fun, as it is playing.
Yeah. I believe you.
But I don't want for Katie and her team to lack for anything that they need to be successful. I don't want her to say, oh, well, if we'd have, maybe if we'd have done this, it could have, made the difference between winning and losing. So again, it's just kind of like you're in for a penny, you're in for a pound.
Right.
Once we got into this thing, I want her to have everything that she needs. And so long as the team is new and they need my help, then I want to be there to give them the help that they need. But the better that they do it, the less I have to do. And like Katie went out to Vancouver and had a great weekend. She won Queen of the Realm out there against Diane Fonseca, who's an awesome player, very underrated. And Janet Lung, who's, I hope I'm pronouncing her name right, but she's on the Canadian national team for softball. I mean, she's she's a great athlete. And she and Lawrence played incredibly well and won the women's division out there, played very high level. I didn't go. And then she and Etienne played pretty well and just got beat by a team that was playing better on the co-ed day, and that's fine. But yeah, that's the goal. Like Katie can go and play with Etienne right now because they've been doing it.
Right.
And Etienne knows our system and they know how to play good.
Machine.
Yeah, and so, but yeah, that's the goal. That's the goal. But, the overall goal is to be the best in the world, and it's disappointing that we didn't get an opportunity to see if we could sustain that.
Right.
There's only been 4 women in the modern era of round net with the NHZ that have been number 1 in the world, and Katie's one of those.
Who are the other 3?
Laura and the twins.
Gotcha.
So I'm extremely.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
Yeah, I'm extremely, proud of what she's been able to accomplish, being 5 and 6 years younger
Mm-hmm.
than the people that she's been playing against, and I'm disappointed that we didn't get the opportunity to finish the season.
Yeah.
And see what we could have done, because we really did a great job putting the pieces in place to be successful.
Yeah.
And
it's true.
So
it is true. Well, listen, we got phase 1 of we're gonna do 3 parts here with Tripp. We kind of went a little out of chronological order with diving into the K2 segment, but we wanted to have it streamlined with the episode that we filmed with Katie just prior to this. So we're gonna take this section and lump it in right after Katie's episode, and then sort of go, that'll be kind of 2, and then we'll go 1, 3, and we'll get into all the nitty gritty with Tripp. So basically right now we're gonna take a little break and fire back. So stay tuned. We'll see you next week. Tripp, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Heck yeah, let's do it.
Spike lemonade.